need you to work that day. More information will be coming.
All right. Oop, went back one. Very good. Yeah, make sure that 16th is very important. And we'll talk about scrimmages in a minute, but I know guys are chomping at the bit to get out there and run. So those are going to be your opportunities to do that. Mike Wilbur, you got anything, Vice President, mentoring, anything new, changed?
No, nothing's changed. I'll get an email out by the end of the week.
Okay. So I know we talked at the first meeting about the mentoring program, and mentors were defined and assigned to mentees or guys who are in their second to fifth year. If you do not know who your mentee is, or your mentor especially, so if you're in that second to fifth year and you don't know who your mentor is, make sure you contact Mike so we can get it straightened out. Done a good job putting this together, and JP's working to make sure that you get assigned to several games early with your mentor, and then kind of occasionally throughout the season. So make sure you follow up with Mike if you're not sure what's going on there. Hernandez, anything on youth lacrosse?
The games will start on March 30th and March 31st. I got a rough schedule. I will send them out on every Sunday night or Monday, like per week, and ask them for availability. So just know that the games start at the end of the month, and they'll go till mid-May.
Mike, this is Frank Fry. Just to let you know, we have a request for that scrimmage day at Caravel, but I have not heard back from Caravel yet. So there's nothing definite, but we're still anticipating that being the day for the youth training and anybody else that's going to be training that day.
Yeah, I was going to send out an email late tonight just asking if they knew more about that. But no, thank you, Frank. That saves me a thing. But I'll make sure I'll stay in contact with them. And
yeah,
sure
I'm the only one that's made contact with Caravel, so I'd be the only one who knows anything about it.
Okay, well, I'll stay in contact with you then.
Yep, thanks.
Well, Frank, except I'm here and.
Oh, Ray, good.
So nothing more to add. You got it right. And Mike, I put in for the stadium plus one field. It wouldn't be surprising if it was only the stadium, given the wet conditions as usual.
Okay, well, we'll see where it goes, and
you bet.
Hopefully, we have the two. If not, we'll have the stadium.
Right. I'll let
Thanks,
you know,
Ray.
or Frank will. Between us, we will. Yep.
All right, very good. Is that it, Mike? Mike,
Yep,
is that you good? Yep. Okay, so and thanks to Ray and to Frank for making sure we're getting that set up. And they mentioned the on-field training for youth officials. Just a heads up, keep an eye next month on your U.S. Lacrosse magazine. Little something about the youth lacrosse program that Mike is running and that Mike Wilbur ran before that, and that goes all the way back to Doc. So very good news for us, but just look out for that. Meetings, all this is posted. We've talked about it. Today's March 3rd. We will do one more online meeting on the 24th. I guess since we have 42 people here, we're doing pretty good at getting the word out. So I'll continue to put an event in the Arbiter and also send out stuff. Hopefully I don't have to send out a funny snow cancellation one on the 24th of March. And April 14th is going to be our we'll meet at the State Police in Bear. That will be our elections. Frank is our election chairperson. He will be contacting you, everybody, within the next several weeks for nominations and to explain the process of how we're going to vote. All the positions are up this year. And then, of course, we have the other important events. June 5th is the banquet and the golf outing. There'll be more about all that coming up. but make sure at the very least you have the banquet on your calendar for the 5th of June, 6 p.m. And Mike Varlotta does a fantastic job with that, with the help of Karen and some other people. And then the 10th and 11th is the Foundation's banquet and the All-Star Games. If you're interested in the banquet, go to their website. I think tickets are on sale now. And then the All-Star Games, which we will provide officials for again. We should be good with that. The on-field training. I know we sent out a lot of stuff. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Thank especially our trainers for putting in the time to put together a good program. Chris Patrone had mentioned that he had put together like a kind of one-pager on what he talked about, and I'm going to ask the other people that did stations to do the same, and we'll get them all up on the website, and then you'll have some reference pages for stuff that they talked about. Especially since that's not something that we record and can watch later. But I heard it was great. Unfortunately, I had a last-minute schedule change and could not make it. But it kind of shows to me how strong we're getting as a group. That thing went off so well without a hitch, and that we've got the guys and girls in the organization now who can do the training and keep it going. And then, of course, everybody needs to thank Jack for putting in the effort for the tailgate and the food, because the guy who brings the food is always the most important guy in anything. So thank you, everybody. And we will be giving the coaches at Delaware and some of the athletics people some gifts for putting that together for us and keeping the cost very low and next to nothing. So thank you very much.
Check's in the mail, Jack.
There you go, Jack. All right. Real quick, I just want to remind everybody of our requirements for the DIAA. Mike will document all this for us. So the concussion course, that's due every 2 years. He should be reaching out to you if you're due this year and haven't done it. It's at nfhslearn.org. And you just screenshot the certificate and send it to DLOA@gmail.com, and you'll get credit for it. DIAA testing, the Federation test is not up yet. It doesn't go up till March 18th. You will access that through the Arbiter on the Central Hub. If you're not taking the test for the DIAA in the state of Delaware, but you take it somewhere else, it's got to be the Federation test, 100 questions. And send a copy of the email you get with your results to the DLOA LAX account, and you'll get credit for taking the test. Everybody needs to take the test by April 14th. Scrimmages, I wanted to talk about this real quick because there's been some discussion, a little bit of movement, action on this that we've dealt with this week. So the board, when we met and talked, and we've been talking about this for a couple of years, decided that we would no longer do anything to provide officials for two-team scrimmages because the state DIA will not allow schools to compensate us in any way, but they will compensate us for these multi-team events. It's really not fair. It's kind of disrespectful of us that the one language in their rule is that a scrimmage is defined as something where officials aren't paid. Even though, we work very hard, and often afternoon scrimmages, we take off of work and go over there and all that. So we are not doing any of those single game scrimmages. You should only do the play day scrimmages that JP assigns. If you are asked by a school to do a scrimmage, tell them they got to contact JP. If you're asked by a coach or an AD to do it for money, let me know. If it's your buddy, a family member who's trying to pay you, I would just remind them that the rules say they can't pay us, and don't take the money. I know everybody wants to get out there and work, and a couple of people have asked, what can we do for these teams that are doing these scrimmages? And the best thing we can do for them at this point is tell them to talk to their AD and talk to their people to get the rule changed. There's a proposition in there to do it, and when that's done, we'll be good. We did find out that at least one school reached out to officials in another state, offered to pay those officials to do scrimmages. We kind of quashed that, and thanks to the Bayside group and Don Gallagher and some other people for getting the word out. So we will get support in other areas if they're asked to come officiate. That's a violation of the contract. It's also, if they're going to pay people, it's a violation of the rules. So appreciate everybody's support. Please don't be selfish and, do a game and make us look bad. Just stay solid. It's only a couple scrimmages, and I think it'll pay off. And by next year, we'll have paid scrimmages. So, Mark, you had your hand up? Or were you you were just playing with the buttons? All right. So if you have any questions,
piece of tape over that.
if you have any questions, contact JP or I, but certainly make sure you're available on the 9th and the 16th, and we'll get you, definitely get you some work. And you can always do what I do sometimes and put on ESPN3 on your iPad and set it up on the treadmill and just use the speed buttons and pretend like you're doing one of those games. All right, Crew app. At this point, everybody should have access. Everyone should be in the You Make the Call group. So if you don't have access to the Crew app, you don't know what I'm talking about, contact JP. If you're in Crew app but you're not in You Make the Call, let JP know with a text. We'll get you in there. That's going to be an important tool. And one thing I did want to talk about real quick is we are putting some clips up. Some of them do involve some of our officials. We're not doing this in any way to embarrass anybody or call anybody out. The clips that we're using, I think, are effective teaching tools. And I did want to talk about this one real quick that we put up. And I wanted to explain a couple things to everybody. So if you didn't see this clip on the You Make the Call, particularly watch an attackman will come around this corner and he'll come about here and he will feed the ball to another attackman back here. Keep your eye, just like a good official, keep your eye on the passer. Okay, I don't know how choppy that was. I'll play it one more time. Make sure you're kind of focused here right after he throws his pass behind the cage. Okay, so in watching that attackman who was defended tightly, but I don't even think the guy threw a check one time in that whole deal, took it upon himself to turn around and use the stick as a weapon and hit the guy very hard. And that has no place in our game. So the response I think that JP sent out was that's a pretty easy call. To me, that should be an ejection. That guy doesn't belong in that game. It would be different in my mind if he took a little bit of a back check late, or, if he got an extra shove and he got to turn around and tap the guy and all that, then you could take both guys for a minute for unsportsmanlike. But he was in no way provoked. And it's unfortunate that we have players like that in this state. Part of the purpose wasn't so much to talk about what we would do with that, but also that we need to be continually watching the play and working our mechanics. So, all of these decisions that we give you on the You Make the Call, you may never see that, or you may see something that's kind of like that. You have to use your head. But you see a guy just turn around and swing at a guy totally unprovoked, that should be an easy one. All right. Are there any questions about that? You can open your mics. Comments. All right. That was easy. All right. So, every year we've been getting a special guest in to talk about something that's kind of important to our season. This year, the importance of the person or his knowledge or depth of knowledge is no different than last year when we had Dave here. And this year, we've talked about one of our big focuses is going to be on pre-games and getting pre-games done. Very, very, very important part of the game. So I asked Sean Murphy to join us. And if you give me 1 second, I'll find the biography. So Sean has been a referee for over 20 years. He has worked as a referee at 2 World Championships. He's been an assessor at a 3rd World Championships. He's worked 3 NCAA Final Four weekends. And where I met Sean is because he's one of the lead clinicians for U.S. lacrosse and officials training. He's the Northeast Region Coordinator for officials training for U.S. lacrosse. He's done 5 Massachusetts State Finals and 7 or 8 New Hampshire State Finals. He's a DLOA referee, and we're very happy to have Sean. So I'm going to give Sean the floor to talk about pre-games. And I'm going to put up, Sean, I'm going to put up the thing you sent me with your little pregame for this year. And that'll be on the screen while you're talking.
Certainly, go right ahead. I'll work off of that. And there's a few edits on that because there's some college rules, but it's a good basis to work off.
All right. Crap, I just had it up here. Give me a second. You can go ahead and start, and I'll get it up.
Okay, well, first I want to thank everybody. Thanks for having me on, Greg. Gentlemen and lady, from what I understand, welcome aboard. Get ready for another great season. When I spoke to Greg back in January, he asked me if I do a little overview of how and what we need to do in our pre-games. So some of this will be personal, some of it will be kind of well-known mechanics, but the basis, as Greg said earlier, about take care of your crew, that starts with the pregame. The pregame sets the tone, and if you're talking about a high school game, most of us know you're hoping to park next to each other in the parking lot, you're changing out of the trunk, but that is the time that you get to do your pregame. The one you see on your screen there is one that we use in our college pregames. A handful of us have kind of used that and picked at it and tweaked it each year. And we have a lot of time to do that because we have a locker room. We have an hour and a half to work on it. So a lot of these things can be touched upon when it's only that, 20 to 30 minutes in the parking lot that you shoot for when you're doing a high school game. When you do the pregame, make sure that if you're the R on that game, that, it's not a dictator's role. It's a leadership role. There's a big difference. You're the R for a reason. Whoever the assigner was decided that, you're the boss on that game. So go ahead, do what you have to do, but know that you're not a dictator. You're just a leader for that day. Also think of the pregame as a discussion and not a lecture. Sometimes we'll work with officials who just want to get across their point. Here's how it's going to be done, and that's it. And I don't think that works very well. So no matter if I'm working with the newest guy in my district or the guy who's done 10 national championships, and if I happen to be the R, or if he happens to be the R, then we say, hey, this is a discussion, not a lecture. I think that goes a long way with people respecting one another. And even if you're not the R that day and you've worked for 20 years and the other kid is a 3-year person, well, he's an R for a reason, and you're there to train him. Use it as a training opportunity. Looking at the sheet in front of you, I'm just going to go through quickly the ones that I like to hit on, even when we do a quick pregame. Positions you don't have to worry about so much, working from the top down here. Positions we don't have to work on so much because it's just an R and a U in a high school game. If it's a 3-man game, then yes, we do have to assign positions, who's going to be the helper on the face-off, and who's running which direction. Talk about reading any memos. That's a big one. We get a lot of memos from DLOA, and I work in both New Hampshire and Massachusetts for high school levels, and we get different memos all the time with updates and changes. And in Massachusetts, our MIAA is somewhat similar to NCAA, where they think they're all big and mighty, so they decide to tweak a few things here and there. So those memos come out, so we discuss those. Coach's certification, that's not a big deal for the pregame. That's all something we do all the time. But just know that one of my things I bring up in a pregame is let the R do all of the answering of questions. in case you have a slightly different interpretation of something, you want to be working off the R's interpretation. That doesn't mean that the assistant, the ARs or the U cannot talk, but they know that the first answer should come from the R. Don't worry about the 5 yards warm up. That's a new college piece. Captains in the coin toss. Again, your R is going to do the discussion anytime during the captain's coin toss. Obviously, if he points to you or asks you if there's anything to add, please feel free. I tell my people, when I point to you and ask if you have anything to add, that's not just for show. I may have forgotten something, or you may have some local knowledge of a team or players that you may need to talk about. So please join in. If someone says, you know, if you have anything to add, don't think it's just for show. Face-off guys. In college, we speak to the face-off guys before the game, but it's not required in high school. Yet, oftentimes, as a pregame, as I'm walking the field, you'll usually have one coach working with 2 or 3 face-off guys, and I will go talk to them, watch them for a few seconds, and ask if they have any questions. It's a nice little preemptive attack. You get it done before the pregame, and the guys know that you're human. They see you there. You're willing to talk and answer questions, and that goes a long way. Face-offs, obviously, it says what to expect, and we're all getting very good, I think, at the whole lineup. It's going much better, the top to stop. The rest of it is more about who does what on our 3-man mechanics, but we have the face-off man doing most of the work, and the helper will back out. In a 2-man game, obviously the person with the ball conducting the face-off is going to do all of that, and but that doesn't mean that the person who is the wing official at the time cannot be a helper. Whether it's a pre or post whistle violation, if you're looking through the face-off at the other wing as a wing official looking across, you can also help with any type of violation. So know that 90% of those whistles will come from your face-off guy, and the helper the wing can help there as well. Don't worry about the restarts. That's always done by the face-off man in a 2-man mechanics. Skip down to the backcourt or the over and back. A quick discussion in pregame goes a long way. Are you going to have a verbal to yell to your partner, watch over and back? Are you going to make a visible, the over and back signal? I like to tell my guys I'm going to make the over and back signal and yell back if I'm the lead official, so that he or she knows that once the ball crosses that line, we're going to have an over and back. If it's a deflection or a shot, I'm being loud, I'm being obnoxious, and I'm saying no, no, no. In other words, no, it is not going to be a backcourt violation. Stick check, something to discuss in the pregame. Obviously, how many you're going to do. You're going to get 1, you're going to get 2. When will you do them? When's the easiest way to do them? I know in Massachusetts, they kind of met in the middle. Federation tells us to do 2. College wants us to do 6. So Massachusetts wants us to do 4. And you can get most of those done in the first half even because of timeouts. So discuss with the R how he wants to get those done, which sticks you're going to get. If one person's on the far side getting the ball, nothing says that one official can't get a stick from both teams. So this can all be brought up during your pregame. Restarts, we always discuss those. Crease play is huge at the college level, obviously now, but it's always been a big issue in all levels. Now, even at Federation, in part of pregame, I tell my guys, you have to know where you're looking. Now, if you're a trail and you see someone crashing the crease, hopefully, as a good partner, you're going to come down and add an extra set of eyes. You're going to be at least, 6 or 8 yards inside the restraining line as an extra set of eyes. It looks a little closer. If you have to make some type of push call or hold or slash call while your partner is watching the feet to make sure he's not in the crease, then that goes a long way with coaches. They see that both sets of eyes are watching and that no one's being disadvantaged, either the attacker or the defender, or the goalie for that matter. Skip down where you see number 4 down below. I say that one talks about resets, but we don't do resets in high school. We would do I refer to that when we talk about a possession on the face-off. If we have a possession during face-off, whoever it is that yells and whines, it should be an echo and a mirror from the other official so that everybody knows that possession has been gained and that we are playing and the ball is eligible and the players are eligible to leave their box. So that comes up in pregame for me. A couple little tidbits I threw in here that I use in every pregame, no matter what level I do. The one with the circle in front of it says, be aware of strange timeout call. Coach is coming down, there's a quick break, and all of a sudden they step over the line, they're going around, and there's a timeout for no good reason. I tell my guys the first thing you're going to do is count. Make sure that timeout isn't because the team with the ball just ran over with their 7th guy on the front side of the floor. So do a quick count, blow the whistle, tell him he's offsides. Now, because he has a dead ball, he is entitled to take a timeout now. But a lot of times they don't. They just wanted to try to trick the officials, as they usually do. But they are entitled to take it. But know that, if you have that strange timeout call, know why it might happen. The next one to that, about 2 men down. The team is playing with 4 poles, and one of them releases earlier than, before the next one. Make sure that 5th one coming in isn't another long pole. Because if there's a pole serving the penalty, some coaches may not know the rule, or some may not be smart enough to switch them out for a shorty. So make sure if there are 2 men down, that when they put any time the man down, actually, when that person comes out of the box, if they've got 4 poles on the ground, out of the field, make sure that they don't send a 5th. I tell guys and ladies, try to give the coaches information. Nothing says that we can't talk to coaches and answer questions. I tell coaches questions will be answered. Calls or yells or screams directed at me won't be answered. So questions can be taken care of. One thing to keep in mind, though, is always to be facing the field. Even if we're having a discussion with the coach, back is to the sideline, eyes to the field. 10-man ride, that might happen sometimes in high school. So know what to look for. Know that someone has to indicate whether or not they think it was a shot. That's why we get paid the big bucks to determine if it was a shot. So if someone's throwing the ball towards the cage on a 10-man ride because the goalie's out, then know that it could possibly be a shot. And if it goes out of bounds, whoever's closest will get it back like a normal shot. We'll skip the next one and move down to moving picks. Another thing I bring up in my pre-games, loss of equipment. Okay, there's a little typo in there, but the loss of equipment, if an attackman loses equipment, we stop and we kill it and we bring it out in the alley, he starts it again. If a defenseman loses equipment, he keeps playing, we have to throw a flag down. It's one of those strange rules we have, but we bring it up. Also, I usually put a little asterisk there next to it after the loss of equipment, and I talk about goalie equipment. Anytime a goalie breaks his gear, any part of his or her gear, then the play is stopped immediately. I've had it in college games where a goalie will come out to try to make a check, breaks the stick during the check, and the attackman comes around to a wide open cage. But you cannot allow that. It has to be an instant whistle. That's a safety rule, even at the highest levels. So if you have a goalie equipment either dropped or broken, then that's an instant whistle. We also have to determine whether or not, it happened years ago. I haven't seen it in 15 years now. But, a goalie would throw a glove down when a kid's on a breakaway. Well, that becomes an unsportsmanlike conduct foul as well. We still have to blow the whistle to kill it so he doesn't get hurt, but we also can assess a 1, 2, or 3 minute unsportsmanlike penalty. Delay a game, the person that rolls it away after they've been called for a ward or an illegal screen, keep an eye on that. If you've asked the defenseman to back up 5 yards and you had to ask him 3 times, maybe a flag is due, and then they won't do it again. Neither team will do it because they see that you're giving him a chance to get back, and gee, you know what? He's not getting back, so I have to throw the flag. With the new warding, not warding thing, with the 2 hands on the stick we have now, we have to talk about warding and spearing and unnecessary roughness. At the high school level, with 2 hands on the stick, you're allowed to ward a little bit with that elbow pushing off a little bit, but you can't blow somebody up. Not even to the level that you're seeing in college games now. You can go unnecessary roughness, and if the contact is led with the head, then you have a spearing, and then we have the tools to use that way where we can take that out. And finally, one of the last things I talk about is consistency. I have sample examples there for the cross-check, hold, the slash. In other words, whatever calls we make, and at whatever time we make them, that sets the tone. That tells us what level we are at. If that wasn't a slash in the first quarter, then it's not going to be a slash in the fourth, and vice versa. If it was, then it will be. So talk to your crew about consistency. And I think the biggest part of it is also that, we need to use this as a discussion, like I said earlier. Don't, one of my favorite parts of a pregame is to get through this little list pretty darn quickly and then ask people, have you had any interesting plays? Have you had any weird plays? Have you had any situations that you want to discuss? And that goes a long way because, the old proverb or whatever they call it of expect the unexpected, stuff can happen. We've all been in that weird game where stuff happens, and we need to know what we're going to do. And I find that if we bring stuff up before the game, it's going to go a long way. going back to the beginning of the discussion, for a high school level game where you have that 20 to 25 minutes of time standing there while you're getting ready out of the back of the car, then most of this can be covered, but it doesn't quite go always in order. It doesn't have to be, out on this list. You please feel free to use this list if anybody wants it. But just know that make it a discussion. It's very important. One of my biggest things is, setting the tone, is to set the tone for the game. You may know if it's going to be a contested match. You may know if it's going to be a blowout. You might or might not know a coach or both coaches, but your partner may. All these little things can go a long way. You might say, if Coach B is yelling, then we probably missed something because he never yells. But Coach A, he's just a screamer. He just wants to be heard. Give him a nod and a wink every now and then. Let him be heard, and we're okay. That comes up in the pregame discussion, and that goes back to setting the tone. I know that I've been in games where a partner may not be there on time. So I've been responsible to get the coaches and get the numbers, get the captains, get the coin toss done even, and tell the other two coaches, hey, we're going to be dropping the ball, 5 minutes late because my partner's stuck in traffic. That happens. That's not a big deal. That goes back to partner communication, though. Make sure you know that. If you're stuck in traffic, try and get a hold of your partner or somebody at the facility who can let them know. If you can't do that pregame, then, I think we've all been there where we have that first 5 or 6 minutes of a feeling out period that can be a little uncomfortable. So I think that shows us the importance of a pregame when you don't have a solid one. You see how things feel different. I know I've gone out to a field even after an hour and a half college pregame, and something will pop in my head. And I'll bring my 2 other guys back together and say, hey, guys, we forgot about this. Here's what we're going to do. Any questions, any discussion? So the pregame can continue into the game if it's part of something that needs to be covered. But if there's anything else you guys need, please feel free to ask some questions. I just keep saying it over and over that pregame really sets the tone. If you've got the person who is out there being concerned or nervous or uptight, then I think we're going to have trouble. If you have 2, trained professionals as we are, we're the ones getting paid, so we're the professionals, get there, do your job, know the book, know your rules, know the situations. If you've got what you think is a real big game coming up, you know what? Do some homework. Check the last 3 games they did. Check the box scores. Check what your partner has done before. Have you had them? Player tendencies. Player number 29 tends to get 3 or 4 slashes each game. Well, those are player tendencies that can all be brought up in pregame. So even in a high school pregame where we're just working out the back of our trunks, it's a great time to make it a discussion. Sometimes people want to park conveniently to the field. I tend to park in the corner of a parking lot away from any moms, dads, and coaches and do our pregame that way. So if anybody has any questions, please chime in. If Greg wants to question, feel free. But I just want to give you a quick rundown about what I think about pregames and how I conduct them. So it's open to you guys.
No, go ahead. Anybody who has a question, go ahead and ask Sean. It's a very thorough discussion, but I know somebody's going to have a question.
Hey, Sean, dealing with a coach because you want to do the certification and he keeps his back to you, basically ignores you when you're trying to get your pre-certification done. How do you handle that?
I would politely say, hey, coach, I need your attention for 30 seconds. I said, this when I certify you right now, you're certifying that all your players are properly equipped according to rule, which is mandatory. It's in the rule book. It's in our mechanics, but it's also in the rule book that we have to certify the head coach. So I wouldn't be that long, but I said, coach, I just need you for 20 seconds and do it politely. Say, I understand you're busy. We always try to find them when they're not busy, but say, coach, I need you for 20 seconds. I'll let you get right back to it, and I won't rush you. If he's only got 6 minutes to warm up and he's warming up his goalie, all right, so we start 3 minutes later after, we start at 4:06 instead of 4. That's better than not doing a real certification, not shaking his hand, not talking to him the right way we should. I would politely address it and just say, hey, coach, I need 20 or 30 seconds of your time, and we really appreciate it.
Excuse me. Anybody else? Sean, I know on the chat we had a couple of questions about the defensive player losing his equipment. Can you go over that again for them real quick?
Yeah, if I'm an attackman heading toward the cage and the defenseman loses, the weird part is any required equipment, including a shoe, which is the weird one I think needs to go away. But if a defenseman loses a glove per se and continues to stay engaged, we have to throw a flag. That's illegal procedure for playing without required equipment, and that's a safety rule. If an attackman is attacking the cage and the Czech takes his glove off, but he doesn't lose the ball, we're supposed to kill that immediately. The attackman gets to keep it and bring it back out to the alley, and we start it again. So an offensive player does not get penalized. A defensive player does. That's where it's written incorrectly in that little bullet that I haven't fixed yet. But if offense loses it, we kill it immediately and they keep the ball. If defense's glove falls off and he stops playing, we're okay. It's if he continues to engage in the play without required equipment, we would have to throw a flag and you'd have illegal procedure.
Okay. All right, everybody clear on that? So, just because he loses his glove or he loses something, if he stops and either puts it back on or runs off the field, we're fine. But if he engages in play, then we're finished, or then we definitely have a flag. So, we want to make sure we know that. And generally, the way you do it is like you would do. You see a mouthpiece fall out. Get the mouthpiece back in. If a kid drops a stick, he can either run off or he can pick it up. If a defenseman drops a glove and he doesn't seem to know, try and say, get off the field, get out of the play. If he doesn't, you got to kill it, and then you got to throw the penalty, because the penalty kind of makes things fair because you stopped the team's offense. So, that's a good point. Anybody else have anything for Sean? All right. Well, Sean, look in your mailbox in the next couple of days. So you should find one of our coins.
Oh, I love it.
A new tape measure, high quality, and then
I love it.
We will send you a hat. So with our DLOA logo on it, and also we always commemorate Bob Schweitzer. I don't know if in your travels. Bob. Yep. So Bob is the founder of our group. And unfortunately, we lost Doc to the terrible disease of cancer a few years ago, and we can't seem to let him go. So we wear him around with us all day. But
that's okay. I'm very appreciative.
I do really appreciate you. I really appreciate that you took the time to be with us. I think it's always good. We're doing well. We're developing a good cadre of trainers here. But I think it's always good to get an outside voice at least once during the season and help us continue to grow.
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you for the gifts. And I'm a teacher by trade, so I really do enjoy what I do, and especially now with the training I do for officials. As I was told when I first came in by the big wigs up here, we're training our replacements. So always pass on what you have, and I love when I do it, and anything I can do to help any group, I gladly do it. So I appreciate you guys giving me some time, and anything I can do to help is always here.
Very good, and we'll see you very soon. So thank you.
All right, take care, everybody. Good luck this season. Everybody stay healthy and do well.
All right, I wanted to real quick. I don't know if Sean's staying with us or not. I just wanted to touch on a couple things for us because to me, pre-games are super important. And the longer I do this, you would think it's kind of counterintuitive. I kind of figured, as you got into it, you'd show up, you'd be ready to throw your shit on and jump on the field and do a game, and it would be easy. I've found more and more the pre-games are important. And they serve a couple of purposes. I mean, like Sean said, most importantly, it sets the tone for the game. It sets the tone for what we're going to do as a crew. Our expectations are set, but it also, there's a human element to it. We get to know the people we're working with. Generally we like to work with people, but we like to work with certain people, but there's, you're working with different people every day, and every person wants to do things a little bit differently. So, we make sure we get to know each other. My favorite pre-games are the ones that just kind of start off with 2 or 3 minutes of, hey, how you doing? How are the kids? You know, how's work? What's going on? You know, you get to know a little bit about each other. So for our pre-games, you know, to me, best case scenario, we're showing up 45 minutes early. We're talking through that for about 20 minutes, and then we're hitting the field. So we're on the field at least 20 minutes before game time. Take care of certifications, take care of face-off guys, do all that. But that gives us a good, strong pregame to make sure we're ready. Like Sean said, that's not always going to be totally possible. Sometimes, you know, we're coming from different places, different situations, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So to me, there's a couple of ways we can handle it. One is the referee can kind of send the minutia stuff out by an email. You know, this is where I expect everybody to start. This is, you know, this is how I want to do this. This is how I want to do that. You know, so on and so forth, so we could read it, and then, you know, maybe talk for a few less minutes. Some of us who have the same type of phones, certainly while we're in a car, you could put on some kind of a, you know, group phone call. The Crew app, everybody has the ability in Crew to put in and chat with different people. So you could even, you know, it's not as effective as standing there with the other officials, but you could at least do some of that through the Crew app. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do, you know, to make up for, you know, for some of those deficits. But best case, we're getting there pretty early, getting a good pregame in. And here are some of the topics that we certainly should be talking about. Certainly, you know, any new rules, sticking points, odd situations we've seen. You know, I'm in most college locker rooms right now. You know, what do you think they're talking about? They're talking about dives. They're talking about shot clock stuff. You know, we're really getting into, you know, making sure we know all that. Talking about mechanics. You know, how are we going to be? Where are we going to be? Different referees want us to do things a little bit differently. And then the meat of your pregame is kind of this game. You know, what do we know about these two teams? What are we expecting? You know, do we have two teams that really can play? Are they going to get up and down the field really well? And the ball's going to be, you know, in the sticks a lot. We're not going to have a lot of ground ball play. You know, is one team excessively physical? You know, or you know, like Sean said, you know, there are a couple particular players you got to keep an eye on, all that kind of stuff. Special circumstances. You know, if you ever do a Tower Hill game, you need to talk about the DuPont timeout. You know, Brad's going to call a timeout, and as soon as everybody starts walking, you know, to their timeout, you say, okay, I'm done, I'm good, which is his prerogative. But you still got to give everybody 20 seconds from the time you tell them the timeout's over to get back on the field. You know, all of those we can talk. The other thing about pre-games that I've found effective in the last couple of years is letting everybody participate. So, you know, if you're the referee and it's a two-man crew, you know, ask your partner, hey, why don't you come prepared to talk to me about over and back? You know, I need a little bit of help with over and back, you know, or let's spend some time, you know, talking about crease play. You know, why don't you put together everything you know about crease play? That way it's not all the referee. The referee's setting the tone and the rules, but other people in the crew are participating in the pregame. And I think that's very effective. Anybody else have anything about pregames? All right, so please, when you're refereeing a crew, make a point of leading a pregame. You know, I know early games, 3:30, 4 o'clock, for a lot of us, it's tough to get there. But do your best to make sure that when we blow that first whistle, we're on the same page. You know, because if we're not on the same page from the first whistle, the coaches, the players figure it out right away, and they use that to divide us, and we don't need that. All right. Next thing we're going to talk about is communicating with coaches and players. Excited to have JP Bennett here to present that to us. So I'm going to make an effort here to let JP take over the screen. Okay, JP, you should now be the host, so you should be able to do what you need to do. So go ahead. JP.
Yep, I got it. Can everyone see? Greg, can you see? Does it say Pregames DLOA?
Yeah, go ahead and hit present to make it full screen, and then we're on your way.
Where's that?
Over next to the yellow share button, PRESENT. Yep, keep going the other way. Other way. No, there's a big button there that says present.
Go to the left. If you make an L with your hand, that's your left hand.
Shut up, Phil. Oh, you're talking about on the actual.
Boom. Good job.
I thought you meant in the program.
Go to the left.
Shut up, Phil. All right. Hello, everyone. Except for Phil. I don't like you. And please, Mark, whatever you're doing, stop playing with the phone. You're driving me crazy with your hand in front of the camera, man. You're killing me. So we are going to talk about what we should do on communicating with coaches and players today. 4 main things to remember when you're dealing with coaches. Delaware is a very small state. Yes, we all know everyone. You know, those of us that have been officiating for a while, you get to know the coaches. Some of you played with them. Some of you were coached by them. All of that has to be left behind, and we need to remain professional at all times. So the 4 main things to remember when we're dealing with coaches is we're not going to answer statements. And this is, I like what Sean said because I'm going to echo a lot of what he's already said. We're not going to answer statements. We're not going to escalate when we talk to coaches. We're going to explain the rule, and we're going to be careful how we talk to the coaches, the tone that we use when we're communicating with them. So there's a lot on these slides. I'm not going to read it to you. Greg's going to post it. You can go back and watch and look at these slides and read over them anytime. I'm just going to hit some highlights. Basically, we're not going to answer statements. This is the best way to keep your rabbit ears down. If a coach has an opinion, he doesn't like what you did or didn't call, ignore it. If he asks a question, if he makes it a statement, ignore it. If he turns it into a question and says, what did you have there? There's nothing wrong with answering his question. If he's just screaming and hollering, that's not a slash, that's not a push. You have to overrule him. He's just venting. He just wants to say something to someone. You're the reason that he's angry, but we don't need to turn around and answer every statement. If we do, you're going to spend more time arguing, which we don't want to argue, than refereeing the game. So it's an opinion. Ignore it. If he turns it into a question, answer the question. When you do answer the question, just like Sean said, he said it perfectly. Never take your eyes off the field, and never at a time where you're on a fast break. Don't stop to answer his question. Don't stop the game. Don't hold your partner up. Don't hold the game up to answer that question. But again, if it's a statement, ignore it. If it's an insult, ignore it, unless it's personal, and we'll get into that in just a second. We're not going to escalate when we talk to the coaches. If the coach insults you, let it roll off your back. If he gets personal, that's something different. But honestly, in 20-some years, 1 or 2 times a coach has gotten personal. I've thrown coaches out, but not for getting personal. I've turned around, given them a look, given them a conduct foul, gotten closer to them, proximity. They knew they were wrong, and it didn't happen again. If you turn around and insult him back, then we've got a whole other situation. You've just turned it up a notch, and you've infuriated him even more. It's going to get ugly. We all have a threshold. Know what your threshold is going in. If you know you can take so much from a coach, you know where your threshold is. Once he hits that threshold, start to walk him up the ladder. Wait until his team has the ball. Conduct foul, take the ball away. Next time down, the other team has the ball, give him the conduct foul, 30 seconds. We all know what the ladder is, walk him up. But if we get into an argument, or we turn around and we start arguing with him and going back and forth with him, number one, you're taking your eyes off the field, you're taking your attention off the players, you're going to miss something. Don't escalate when you talk to the coaches. Know your threshold and stick to it. Know the rule book. Know what you called. Know what you saw. Explain the rule to him. The coach just wants to be acknowledged. When he does ask that question, he's not sure what you saw. He's not sure what exactly happened. You're much closer to what happened or what didn't happen than he is. He just wants acknowledgement. So tell him what you had. Probably not the best to start with, coach, by rule, this is what I called. Coach, by rule, he swung his stick uncontrollably. That's a slash. Maybe, coach, in my judgment, that stick was uncontrolled. He slashed him. That's why I called it. Explain what you had. Explain the rule. If it's an unusual rule, if it's an unusual circumstance, make sure you've talked to your partner. You know what they saw. If you're reporting the foul, make sure you're wording it exactly as your partner said to you. Or there's nothing wrong with letting your partner go and explain, adjudicate the foul to the table and explain to the coaches and then get back to a spot. There could be times where there's multiple fouls and your partner has a better understanding of it. As long as the rule is being explained, the coach just wants to know what happened. If it's a loose ball, if it's something that you don't have time to explain and your partner called it, you knew there was something there, but you don't know exactly what it was, coach, I'll get you an explanation in the next break. There's nothing wrong with that, because by the time the next break comes, the coach is already angry about something else and you don't have to worry about getting that explanation. But keep it in the back of your mind, whatever he was asking the next time you get together at a timeout or a chance at a face-off, hey, what did you have on this, just so I can explain it to him. Go back and explain it to them. They just want acknowledgement. They just want to know that they're being heard. Like I said, as long as they're not insulting or, getting personal, just talk to the coach. There's nothing wrong with talking to a coach and explaining what you had or what you saw, why it was called. And then this is the big one. Watch the way we speak to coaches. I know some of you have worked with me and you're saying, wow, JP's saying watch the way you talk to coaches. Yes, I understand that, but it's different for some of us that have been in the state a lot longer. We've got different relationships with the coaches. Yes, some of you have worked with me, and I know you've gone back, and I can't believe he said that. Some of us can get away with that. Most of us cannot. Watch the way we speak to coaches. Those of us that are teachers or parents, you've got that teacher or parent voice. When your kids are acting up, your voice gets louder, it's clear, it's strong, it's confident. You can be loud and confident, but not disrespectful to a coach. The coach hears that, he's going to stop. He's going to understand that you mean business. If you're sarcastic or rude or dismissive, you're waving your hand at the coach, that's just going to infuriate him more, and he's just going to want to argue, or he's going to call me up after the game and say, I never want that official back on my field. That parent or teacher voice it's a huge weapon, or not weapon, it's a huge tool for us to get that coach that's acting like a child to calm down and realize, coach, we got it. We know what we're doing. Let us call the game. You coach your players. So when the coach is acting like a child, not necessarily treat him like a child, but use that teacher or parent voice and get him to relax and calm down. Those of us that are not parents or teachers, you've been out with a friend, maybe at a bar, at a party, he's acting like a fool. You know what I'm talking about. Treat him like that. Use that voice where you've gotten him to calm down and relax, and you've gotten him out of trouble. So just to sum up, when we deal with coaches, talk to them when it's the right time, not during live ball play. You're not going to hold up play to talk to a coach or to explain something. If there is a timeout and he wants an explanation, talk to your partner first. If you're doing a stick check, do the stick check, talk to your partner. At the end of the timeout, then explain to the coaches. If there is something to explain, if it's an unusual play, a penalty, a situation, make sure both coaches are getting the same explanation. Yesterday, we had a situation with a shot clock. I went to the coach that was the coach that lost the situation. I explained it to him first. The other coach knew I was coming to him, but I went to the coach that was getting the raw end of the deal. It had to do with the shot clock. I explained it to him. The other coach was walking across. Coach, I'll be right there. I'm going to give you the same explanation. Went over, gave him the same explanation. Both coaches were happy. They just want to know what's going on. If I tell one coach one thing and then go back to play, that other coach is going to wonder, well, why does he get information and I don't? And then kill them with kindness. But don't confuse kindness with sarcasm. Once we start getting sarcastic, and like I said earlier, once we start trying to one-up the coach, it's just going to turn into an argumentative situation. It's going to turn into a tense situation where he's angry, you're upset, you're distracted. All he's worried about is yelling at you. He's not coaching his players. You're not keeping your mind on the game. You're losing focus. You're trying to remember what happened or what he said. Just answer questions when they arise. Make sure you're keeping your focus on the game, but you're also acknowledging them. That's all they want. Players are a completely different beast, especially in high school. One thing that I think we don't do enough of is praise the good things that they do. Again, if they ask, tell them what they did or what you saw. And remember that they are high school kids and they're full of piss and vinegar. And the most important is that you are the adult, not them, even though most of them think they know more than we do. So like it or not, most of the players that we interact with in these high school games, they think we're the enemy. They've grown up watching everything on television. Every other day there's some official that did this or did that. They see this. They hear their coaches. Every game, it's the official's fault. It's their, they cost us the game. Every player feels that way. So let's change that perception. Let's start with a joke. Make them, it starts in your pregame or in the captain's talk. Get the captains on your side. Do it with the face-off conference. Make sure they know you're there for them. Make sure they know we're human. Ask about school. Ask about their classes. If it's a player that we're familiar with, that we know is being recruited, ask how his trip went. If you know he went to visit a school or you've seen something, how are things going? Build a rapport with these kids so that the next time you come back, they remember. And we might not have every kid on our side, but you've got that kid. So he goes back to the huddle. No. That official, he's good. I've had him before. He knows what he's doing. We just want these kids back on our side. We've got the coaches yelling at us. We've got parents yelling at us. If the kids know we're out there, we're doing the right thing, that's what we're looking for. We've all had those games where you've walked a coach up the ladder, you go back out on the field, and that coach's player says, geez, I wish he would just shut up. That's what we're looking for. We want the players to understand we're just doing our job. When we do praise the good, make sure we do it discreetly. Don't go out and high-five a kid that just scored a good goal. But a good example is if a kid sets a good pick. Hey, I like the way that was a good pick. Your feet were shoulder width apart. You stick with it. Keep doing it that way. If he's not shoulder width apart and it's not something that you would call, hey, next time make sure you set that pick correctly. It's just communicating with them. Good, bad, but you're not coaching. It's just communication. A good example is a couple years ago. This was many years ago, probably about 10 years ago at Tower Hill. I don't know why we're picking on Tower Hill today, but a defenseman was on the face-off. He was running in. His stick got checked out of his hand, and he literally ran out of the pile and just stood away from everyone. I didn't think he'd know the rule. He knew if he got touched, he would lose possession for his team. So, when I got a chance, I went over, I said, hey, that's a pretty smart play. Good job. Keep it up. So it's just, again, building a rapport, making sure they know we're out there for them. Same thing with the coaches, but it's a little bit different when a kid asks. You throw a flag on a kid, what's the first thing he does? He throws his hands up like, I didn't do anything. What did I do? You're crazy. He may not know. He legitimately may not know what he did. Take the time, explain what he did as you're walking him to the penalty box, or, if there's a scrum going on, separate them, whatever. Explain what he did wrong. No, your hands were on his back. Your hands were on his back. I know you disagree, but I was right here. Your hands were on his back. If there's a face-off violation, the next time those players come out, you could tell your partner who's taking the next face-off, here's what he did. Or run up and, get together, both of you. Tell him what he did on the face-off. Explain what you saw, what you're looking for. It's all about communication. Most important thing, again, only if they ask. They have opinions also. If it's an opinion, we really don't need to entertain it. If it's an insult, that's a different situation. But if it's a question, there's nothing wrong with answering that question. They are kids. They've been in class all day. They're tired. They got homework. They got a test tomorrow, but they're ready to take on the world. If it's an opinion, ignore it. If it's an insult, that's something different. The one thing we want to remember, though, is, we're not telling kids to shut up. We have to be careful the way we're addressing them, because that's just going to escalate it even more. He's going to go back to the coach and say, Coach, he told me to shut up. That's not the way we should interact with students. We can try things instead like, easy, easy, easy. Son, play the game. Talk to your own team. There's no need for that. We want to keep it we want to make sure that the tone that we're using is not inflammatory. We want to make sure that we're not insulting them by telling them to shut up. There's nothing wrong with close your mouth. There's a difference between close your mouth and shut up. It doesn't seem like it's that big a difference, but it is. I tell my students in my class all the time, close your mouth. I would never tell my students to shut up. There's a negative connotation to shut up. Just be careful the way we're talking to them. That might escalate them even more, and you end up then unsportsmanlike conduct, or they were wrong, but the way we interact with them could escalate it even more. And this just goes along with the last one, with the coach's threshold. Our threshold with the player may be a little bit lower. We're not going to take as much from them. As soon as he starts to get personal, we're taking the kid. There's no reason for a kid to get personal with an official on the field. If they start to act like a child right away, you're going to use that teacher voice or that parent voice again, and you're going to make sure he knows that's enough. You've gone too far off the field, whether it's 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, whatever we need to do. We're going to make sure that player knows he's gone too far. They are teenagers. When a coach acts like a teenager, he's not supposed to. When a teenager acts like a teenager, well, he is supposed to, because he doesn't know any better. But we want to build those relationships with the kids. We want to change that perception of it's them against us. It's not us against them. We're out there working for them. Like I said, we've all been on the field where you hear the player say, it's all that ref's fault. This ref sucks. I've had him before. It's all his fault. He's horrible. We had him last week. We need to start changing that perception. And the way we do is just build a rapport. Let them know. I mean, most of you are not, I'm trying not to send you to the same teams, but you've seen these kids. We've watched them from freshmen, seniors. We need to build a rapport with them and make sure they know we're out there for them. Make it fun. If you're not having fun and you don't laugh at least once or twice during the game, you're definitely doing it wrong. And last but not least, just don't be this guy. Hopefully. Doesn't look like it's going to come up. Greg, can you get it if I give it back to you?
Go ahead, give it back. I'll try.
You got it?
I don't think so.
All right, how do I give it back?
I
I just did.
Should be somewhere, like, do you have a thing at the bottom that says like manage participants?
Yes, I got it. So I
So
find you.
under that, find me, hit more. Hit more, and then it should say,
Got it. You are.
there we go. I'm now the host. So let me get this all back up. Thank you, JP.
Hey, JP, a lot of us know the assistants and the staff. How do we handle that if they want to talk to us? Just talk to them.
I don't want to insult anyone, but the better teams are going to have an assistant that runs the box. Make friends with that assistant, because he's the one that's going to be running the box and running the substitutes, and he's the one that's going to keep the head coach out of trouble. So if we've got that head coach, and we all know that head coach that's out on the field 5 or 10 yards, he's not in the way, not 10 yards, but he's not in the way. He's just 1 or 2 steps out. Hold on. Don't be this guy. There you go. We all know that one coach is 1 or 2 steps out on the field. Talk to that assistant coach. Hey, get him off the field. Keep him back. That assistant coach can be your friend. We all know the teams that have that other assistant coach that is even worse than the head coach. That's the one that we're going to say to the head coach, I'll listen to you. I'm not going to listen to him. There are some assistant coaches that are to be seen and not heard. I know that doesn't sound fair. It sounds like we're being, it sounds like there's a double standard, but it's true. The better teams, they have that assistant coach that knows what he should and shouldn't do. And then we have those other teams that the assistant coach thinks he has just as much right to talk to us as the head coach. That's one of the things that you talk about in your pregame also. How are we going to handle the assistant coaches? Well, I had him before, and this guy never stops talking. Well, first time he does, coach, I understand, but I'm only talking to the head coach. But again, if he's handling himself the right way and the assistant coach has a question and it's not interrupting the game, it's not disrupting the flow, it's not disrespectful, there's nothing wrong with answering his question either.
Thank you, JP. All right, let's look at this guy again. So this is the guy we don't want to be for several reasons.
Now, then that goes along with our tone. The reason I put that in there, I was going to talk about that, he just seems angry. So when he throws that flag, and I know a little bit more about him, that's the way he throws every flag in high school games, and they say he's gotten a little bit better in college, but the way we carry ourselves, the way we talk to the coach is going to affect the way you get through that game, whether the coach is going to be happy, angry, or indifferent. Indifferent, we're okay with. Happy, both sides, never going to happen. Angry is what we don't want. Just the mannerisms and the body language and the tone, that guy set a bad precedent because for the rest of that game, that coach was upset because he remembered how he threw that flag and he was just making a spectacle of himself. He was just showing, I can do this because I can.
All right, JP, thank you. So, communication is a super important tool. Like JP said, most of the time coaches just want to know what's going on. There are some coaches that think they deserve an explanation for everything that's called or not called. And at some point you just kind of got to hold your hand up and say, Coach, we're done. We're not talking anymore. And we're only going to really stop play and speak with a coach during something big happens. You have multiple fouls, you have an odd situation, something like that. Otherwise, we're going to take times during the game when we can get near the coach and talk to him.
And Greg, I have a comment too when you have a second.
Go ahead.
So 2 things. Number 1, this is Kyle. I didn't sign on, but I'm sitting here with Frank. Number 2, I definitely want to reiterate what JP said about sometimes we just got to let the coach vent. From my experience, whenever you do have that dead ball and it is the head coach, especially in Delaware, they might not necessarily be as kind of aware of all the rules and how they're really interpreted. So sometimes just letting that coach, again, during a dead ball foul when you have the time, just kind of get all his thoughts out. Like you said, he just wants to be heard. It's better to sometimes let him get all his thoughts out instead of trying to jump right in the middle of him venting and then trying to correct the things that he's saying as he goes, because then that can just fire him up even more and it can get worse. So I just want to say from my experience, again, during a dead ball situation, when you have the time, that has helped me a lot.
Yep. Well, anytime you can share information with the coach when he's willing to accept it. Same with a kid. A kid just wants to know, what did I do wrong? Why did I get a flag on me? Because to your point, half the time the coach won't know. So take those times to talk to them when they're reasonable and you're reasonable. By all of JP's things, my only thing is I do know we have a couple of coaches who think they have some kind of inherent right to get an explanation for everything. And 2.5 hours later, you're wondering why you're just finishing the game. You know, we don't want to stop the game. We don't want to disrupt the flow to explain every routine call. You know, if you get a chance and you're next to him, you talk to him. If you don't know what it was your partner called it, coach, I'll get an explanation. We'll get back to you. And then you get the explanation and you keep it in your back pocket. And if he asks, you give it to him. You know, but that's, yeah, communication is important. The assistant coach stuff is good stuff. You know, sometimes they can kind of help you dial a head coach back, you know, especially if you know him. You know, and I'll go back to pregame a little bit too. You know, knowing who these guys are and how they're going to approach you in the game sometimes helps you get through it a lot easier if you can expect it. All right. Anybody else have anything on that? All right. I do want to respond to a lingering question about this loss of equipment. So, Bill, yes, absolutely. The rule book says if a defensive player loses his equipment in the scrimmage area, which would be defined as in the area of play where it would be a safety hazard, you are going to blow the whistle immediately. Okay. If a defensive player loses his equipment and plays, it's an accepted ruling that's I lost the word.
Playing without the stick.
It's playing without equipment.
Yeah.
It's
Technical
illegal,
foul.
It's a technical foul, illegal procedure. You know, and that's so.
Greg?
Go ahead.
Article 6 clearly says play shall be suspended immediately if any player, doesn't say offense or defense, in a legal way loses any mandatory equipment in the scrimmage area. And
right.
if we have to blow the whistle, the play stops.
Right, but if it's the defensive player, if you stop it for the defensive player, it's going to be a penalty on him. That's the accepted ruling.
All right.
Okay.
Especially if he breaks his cross. And
that's different. If he breaks a cross, he's playing without a cross.
It all falls almost the same. If you had to stop play to because a defensive player lost his stick, that's an advantage, and that's why it's a technical foul. So, yes, if the kid loses his glove away from the scrimmage area, he picks it up and puts it back on, you got absolutely nothing. If a kid loses his shoe and runs away, okay, and goes to the bench and another player comes on, you know, we're good. It very similar to broken sticks. You know, if a kid plays with his stick, when it's broke.
The college rule book and the high school rule book are different in the ARs dealing with the loss of mandatory equipment.
Right, and they're just telling you, the high school rule book in that case is telling you on area safety, you're going to stop play. They're telling you, you're not going to let play continue. So it's a, you know, adjudicate that. If the kid keeps playing and you have to kill it, it's going to be 30 seconds on the defensive player. That's just the way it is. Mike, you got something?
Hey, Greg. Yeah, I think the difference here is that if there's a scoring opportunity, you don't want to take that away from the offense. And if the defense continues to play, then you've got to throw the flag. If it's not a scoring opportunity, then you stop the play and fix the situation.
Right. Go ahead, JP.
Can I just say something? Article 6 goes on and talks about how you're going to award the ball after you blow the whistle and you reset the players. And it goes insofar as alternate possession. If it was supposed to be an immediate flag, then you don't have to go through this entire explanation about who gets the ball. The offense gets the ball. So when you read it all together, it either half of Article 6 is meaningless or they really want a difference when it's mandatory equipment lost in the scrimmage area. You got to read the whole article.
If the offensive player has possession and you have a loss of equipment and the play continues and you have to kill it, it's going to be a flag on a defense with possession. If the ball is loose, you're going to stop play and you're going to award by AP. If the offense loses the equipment, you're going to stop the play fix the situation and award the
But-
ball goes back to the offense. JP, you had something?
No, you just said it.
Okay. I mean, that's all the accepted ruling. So if you go through the whole thing, it's not that's actually one of the very few places where the two rule sets still match. So, all right. Moving on. Before I get to this, I did want to talk. I forgot to put one slide in here today. I wanted to talk about it. It goes with game flow and things like that. I want to make sure we're all clear. So at the clinic, Tommy was talking about hydration breaks and whatnot, and I just want to be clear that there are protocols that the DIAA has to follow for hydration breaks. So we leave that up to the athletic trainers and the coaches determine when we're going to stop play for hydration breaks. We don't just take it on ourselves to do that. Okay, we make sure. It's fine to walk up before the game and say, hey, it's really hot. Are any of these heat advisories in? Is there anything we're doing? But don't just take it upon yourself to stop play because you think it's hot. Take it upon yourself to talk to the coaches and the trainers. We don't want to be disrupting flow when it's not agreed to or expected. All right. Fights. So I wanted to go over this real quick. We did have a couple of fights last year. There were some issues with fighting during football and basketball this year. Very important for us to understand how we're going to handle fights. Before we get there, I believe most fights are preventable. That goes down to what Sean talked about and what we talked about with pregames. If we know the teams we're playing, if we take the time to do a little bit of research and keep our ears open and understand who's who and what they're capable of, we can be ready for almost anything. That's followed by good game management. If during the game we keep it safe, we keep it fair, and we let these players play to their abilities, they're going to keep playing. If sometimes fights start because they feel we're not keeping it safe or we're not keeping it fair. So you want to let these guys play to their abilities, make sure that they're safe, that you have the big stuff taken care of, you have the little stuff in their minds taken care of. And you might, you probably will prevent a fight. What JP said, good communication. If we're talking to these guys, we can talk them out of anything. And once we got all that, more than anything, good dead ball management. You always want to be checking the temperature. You never want to take a play off. So we want to be looking after goals, always watching the players. Everybody should have their eyes on the players after the goals. You never know what could happen. This is when, either you had a late hit and a guy took umbrage to it. You had a slash. You had a kid on the offensive team say something. Somebody took it personally. So we want to be watching players. Anytime you have a foul and a penalty, I don't care if it was just a push or a hold. You might have a kid get upset. He pushes the other kid away. Next thing you know, somebody throws a punch. Keep your eyes on there. And always, when you throw your flag and you stop play, run right to the guys that committed the penalty or had the penalty committed on them. Get in there. If they see you, they're less likely to go after each other. Okay? Big hits, especially stuff on the sideline. Just because two guys go rolling out of bounds doesn't mean it's over. How often have you seen, that's when two guys get up in their face. Timeouts and quarters. That's not a time to sit and grab your scorecard and look at it or run to the bench and get your phone and see who's texted you and all that. That's the time to be watching the players, make sure they get to their benches, get to their coaches, and handle all that. As the game goes on, if a kid, was arguing and he was getting slashed by somebody and you didn't see it, at a timeout, keep an eye on that kid. Make sure he doesn't go and settle it. Always be watching. And if we're doing that and we make a big presence, we probably can prevent a lot of fights. Of course, the last thing I want to say is we don't stick around and watch after the game. It's accepted. It's part of our mechanic to get out, as soon as the game is over. So you blow that final whistle, get your partners with you. We come on the field together. We leave together. We're not refereeing handshakes or anything like that. Certainly, yes. If at the final horn there's a fight, you got to deal with it. But try to get away and get out. Mark brings up a good point, and we're going to kind of try to work this a little bit with the crew. If we know a problem, if JP knows there was a problem with two teams, or we have a feeling, we may put something out in crew and communicate with especially the R and a team that there was an issue. We found out a couple years ago, we had a hell of a game in a state championship game, Sally's against Cape. And there was a bunch of F-bombs and a lot of guys coming, face mask to face mask and near fights and all kinds of stuff. Well, of course, a year later, the one team tells us, oh, yeah, there was all kinds of shit going on social media the whole week coming up to that game. It would have been nice to know that before the game. That would have been a good topic in our pregame. So, it's very important that we know what's going on. All right, when we have that fight, so in this example, and we've seen this before, and my applicant class very nicely pointed out that this slide is backwards. Our lead is actually running right here. So put your best dyslexia on, turn it around, and pretend he's running left. But let's say at this point in the field, these two guys get together, and they decide to start chucking punches. He wants to, immediately, there's a fight.
Greg.
Yeah.
Am I the only one that doesn't see the slide? I'm still looking at the fight slide. The word.
Yeah, same.
It didn't move over?
No, it didn't switch.
Son of a biscuit. Hang on.
It's fighting words.
Hey.
Okay. So you got midi defender came together. You got to fight. So our lead guy is going to come over there. That doesn't mean he's going in the pile. It means he's blowing his whistle. He's circling the pile to try to keep other people out. If you think that you can grab a guy by his shoulder pads and pull him out, and maybe stop it or hold it up, that's fine. Don't get in the middle. Don't put yourself in danger. But don't end up in the middle of a bunch of fists. At that point, get your flags on the ground. And just start taking numbers. Okay. At the same time, the trail right here, everybody sees him, right? He's going to slide over towards the middle of the field. Okay. And this thing's not acting quite the way I want it to. There we go. He's going to freeze the benches. So basically, kind of along that line, he's going to put his hands out wide, freeze the benches, all right, and make sure that only the head coach gets on the field to get to his players, and nobody else does.
Blow the whistle.
Assistant coaches should be moving everybody out of the way. Blow your whistle. Once we have that, we're blowing our whistle, throwing our flags. All right, and we're going to start writing numbers down. All right. Again, don't get involved in the fight. When you have a fight, if you have one, there's no hurry to restart the game. Don't just pull the two kids off the field, throw them in the box, and start the game. Get everybody back to their coaches. Let everything get calmed down. You and your partners get together. Make sure we have all the numbers of the guys that started the fight, guys that got into the fight, assistant coaches that got involved, anything that happened. If you have to, get the site manager involved, get the head coaches involved, talk about what you're going to do, and get it all straight. Don't be in a hurry to restart a game. All right. If in your opinion, the game is at hand and you don't feel good about the rest of it, end the game. Okay. So if you got 4 minutes left and you got a game that's 10 goals, 8 goals, whatever, nothing good can happen for the rest of that game. restarting that game is not all that important. If you feel that that wasn't just an isolated incident that is now gone, don't be afraid to say, coaches, we're calling it. We're done. Write down how much time is left, what the score is, what the situation was with penalties and balls. You know, put that in your report and let the conference commissioners and Tommy at DLOA determine the outcome. I mean, don't do that at the beginning of the game, but, you know, most of these fights are going to end late in the game and nothing good can happen. So if you need to, you know, don't be afraid to use that tool in your toolbox. Again, you have your story straight. If you're the referee on the crew, as soon as you get in your car, you know, and if you have to get out of the parking lot, you know, get out of the parking lot, call JP. Let him know he's getting phone calls, he's getting emails, they're coming. Don't let that take him by surprise, and give him the story. These are the players that were involved. This is what the coaches did. This is what happened. And then you want to get your written report to JP and to Bill Caddy before your head hits the pillow. Okay? You know, don't wait till the next morning. Get it out. The more information that JP and Bill have, the easier it is to deal with. Okay? And we want to get especially ejection information to Tommy as quick as we can, because sometimes these guys are playing back-to-back games. And, you know, there's extra penalties for ejections, and we want to make sure they know what's going on so they can sort it out. A couple other things with the second bullet point. So we had one fight last year that we didn't find out about until a couple days later, unfortunately. And when we finally saw the video, I mean, there were parents in there. There was all kinds of stuff. Unfortunately, with our sport, we're not in a stadium. They don't always give us great site managers or security. And these parents came in and got into it, you know, and that just, you know, that can't happen. And in my mind, if parents get involved in a fight, we're probably going to end the game. We're going to find the AD and we're going to say, look, if they can't be controlled, it's not a safe situation for everybody and you're asking for trouble. Again, go back to the first slide. I think most of them are preventable. If you're doing a good job and you're paying close attention, you can probably stop most fights. But if not, this is how we have to deal with them. Anybody have any questions? Anything? All right. And the next game I get in where there's a fight, I want Ray Forney with me. He can throw a 200-pound player 15 yards. All right. Anybody got anything, new business? Anything for the good of the order? Nothing? Motion that we close?
Second.
Excellent. Make sure that you're listening out for JP's emails about scrimmages. Let me know if you have any questions, problems, situations, anything like that. And we'll talk again on the 24th. All righty. Everybody have a good day. And this will be up. The recording will be up soon. All right. Bye-bye.